So we have news that Apple was testing the M3 Ultra in the MacBook Pro, which could point towards more powerful chipsets coming to the laptops, as well as news about a redesign with OLED coming very soon. So Chinese leaker BiliBili said they found code references to unreleased 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros running the M3 Ultra, and this was allegedly found in a build of iOS 18 running on an iPhone 16 engineering prototype. The codenames found were J514D and J516D, and while D is likely an identifier for the M3 Ultra, considering the Mac Studio's codename is J575D. Now this is crazy news, because obviously right now, Apple offers the M4, M4 Pro and M4 Max in the MacBook Pro, not the Ultra. The Ultra is currently only available in the Mac Studio, but for all that power to be stuffed into a portable machine would have been ludicrous, and creatives would have been all over that. The M4 Max maxes out with a 16-core CPU, 40-core GPU, and 128 gigs of memory, whereas M3 Ultra comes with a 32-core CPU, 80-core GPU, and 512 gigs of memory. That would have been a bonkers configuration for the MacBook. Now you may be wondering, why did Apple end up releasing the Ultra in the MacBook Pro? Well, I'm guessing it's because of thermal and battery life issues this machine would have run into. The Ultra is a powerful chip that needs a lot of power and cooling to run efficiently, and so maybe Apple thought this chip in a MacBook would have caused this machine to overheat and ruin battery life, and we don't want a repeat of the Intel days now, do we? However, the fact Apple has been testing this is a sign that Ultra chipsets could eventually make their way to MacBooks. Apple can make changes in the future where they can offer the power of an Ultra in a more efficient package, and so the fact they're testing this internally definitely shows to me that Apple has interest in offering their highest end chipset in the MacBook Pro. There are creatives who want more and more power in their MacBooks as they continue to push them. I'm definitely not one of them because I'm still happily using the M1 for my video editing needs. But regardless, there's those who would buy an M4, M5 Ultra MacBook Pro, and so Apple should offer this. You know what I'll offer though? A minute for you to click that subscribe button, of course. It's free and it'll bring you the latest about Apple right to subscription box, so please consider it. It would be appreciated. Join the Surround Back gang now. Now, since we do get new MacBooks yearly, what can we expect from this year's MacBook Pro? Well, Mark Gurman told us we can expect the new M5 generation of chipsets, which isn't exactly a surprise. Apple usually debuts their newest generation of Apple Silicon in the MacBook Pro. We saw M4 last October, and so following that up with M5, M5 Pro and M5 Max makes complete sense. Gurman says his chipset will offer a small performance boost, and rumors have been saying these chipsets will once again be based on a 3nm process, and so yeah, they should be 15% faster and more efficient. You may be wondering, what about the Ultra? Well, I don't think we'll see that later this year, since Apple just debuted the M3 Ultra earlier this year, and also accommodating the Ultra in the MacBook Pro likely would require design changes, and Apple's not implementing that just yet. Since if you're wondering if there's going to be other smaller changes with the 2025 MacBook Pro, Gurman says, no, this will purely be a chipset upgrade. Yes, there may be other smaller changes, but I'm not exactly sure what they could change for the time being. Maybe they'll update the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi spec, we could see a new color, since the M4 and M3 generation came in the same range of colors, but that's about it. This is not going to be a revolutionary upgrade. The only reason I'm mildly excited about these new Macs is that it should help bring down the prices of older models, and while the M4, the M3, and even the M2 are still fantastic machines, and so I would highly recommend considering getting an older model and saving a cash. If anything, you might want to save a cash for next year, because if you want to be on the bleeding edge of Apple technology, they do plan to release a major update for the MacBook Pro next year, and I know leaks sometimes hype up future models and then they amount to nothing, but a 2026 redesign does make sense, because we usually see Apple refresh the MacBook Pro's design every 5 years, and so considering the last redesign was in 2021 with the M1 model, it makes sense that 5 years later, we get a redesign. So what can we expect with this new model? Well, there's two main changes we're hearing about. The first change is OLED. We saw this debut on the 2024 iPad Pro, and so as expected, it's going to make its way to the MacBook Pro, and OLED is a massive upgrade in every aspect compared to mini LED. You get higher brightness, higher contrast ratio with deeper blacks, and improved power efficiency, which will help improve battery life. The iPad Pro panel was double stacked too, which meant it was much more durable, and so expect these double stacked panels to come to the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros, considering many hold on to Macs for years and years, and so ideally these machines should have displays that won't get burn-in. The second change we've heard about is thinness. Apple is now back on the thinness bandwagon. This started with the iPad Pro, and now they're releasing an iPhone 17N, so it only makes sense the MacBook Pro also gets a thickness reduction. Now I know this may send alarm bells ringing because we had a cursed generation of thin MacBooks with butterfly keyboards which would randomly stop working and a lack of any actual useful ports, but I think Apple's learnt their lesson. Those 2016 era MacBooks are about to be a decade old, and technology has seen a lot of improvements since then, and so I feel like they can miniaturize other aspects of the machine without compromising on functionality. For example, the aforementioned OLED display will physically be thinner than the mini LED display, and so that will help reduce the thickness of the lid. Also, Apple's chipsets continue to get smaller and more efficient, taking up less space inside the machine. This is also why I think we may see an Ultra chipset debut with a redesigned MacBook Pro, since there'll be internal changes to accommodate the new chipset. Ultimately, Apple managed to make the OLED iPad Pro razor thin without taking any actual features. Well, actually, they got rid of one camera, but the ultra-wide on the iPad Pro wasn't very useful in the first place, and functionally it's just as good as the older iPad Pro, but it's thinner and lighter, and so I think people would appreciate a more compact design for the MacBook Pro as well. Plus, the iPad Pro managed to be structurally stronger despite it being thinner, and so basically, Apple's learnt their lesson, guys. Do not worry about this product being worse because it's thinner. I don't think Apple's going to be removing ports again because that would be way too controversial, and I know some may worry about the physical battery being smaller. Apple may offer a smaller battery since the OLED display is more efficient, and so these MacBooks would offer the same amount of endurance with a physically smaller battery inside. But do remember that silicon carbon batteries are becoming more prevalent. This new technology allows a lot of energy to be stored in a physically smaller cell. We have slim phones with 6,000 mAh batteries, and so I expect Apple to slowly start using that technology with their products. We have heard this could come to the iPhone 17N, so I do expect the MacBook Pro to use this. If we get physically smaller batteries that are more dense, that will help reduce the weight and thickness, whilst offering better endurance, and so we could get the best of both worlds. And I did, by the way, see someone in the Mac Rumors forum mention that the touch bar could make a return, but I have my doubts about that. I think people are pretty happy with no touch bar. A regular function row is more reliable at the end of the day. However, I know that we are seeing more and more Windows laptops offering dual displays or even foldable displays that span the entire canvas, and Apple will eventually get to that point. We have heard about foldable MacBooks coming in the future, but the technology needs to mature, since currently at the scale Apple produces, it would be too expensive. Remember, those foldable Windows laptops are only going to be bought by a few thousand at most. MacBooks are sold in the millions, and so don't expect a foldable MacBook anytime soon. Though we shall see if the redesigned MacBook Pro in 2026 does offer a touchscreen, since that's a big feature Macs have never had, and Gurman said that Apple is experimenting with that. Personally, I don't mind the lack of a touchscreen, but I know some who want this, and so yeah, we may see that with the 2026 MacBook Pros, but don't expect a second display for the time being. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.